And we have both streams running tonight, hopefully, so that's good. This one's been a little while in the making. I've done a fair bit of research on this, started last week. So it's quite a long one. Gets too long, we can see if we need to split it. Good evening, chat room. Red Eye and Julie, Helene, Bristol Mechanic. Good to see you guys. So we're going into money again, no doubt. But who's really running our country? And when I say our country, I mean your country, whether it be the USA, the UK, even Europe. Who is really running your country? Right, here we go. Settle in, because I promise you by the end of this investigation, we're going to be asking some very uncomfortable questions about who exactly is pulling the strings in our democratic institutions. You know, I was a cop for 20 odd years. I conducted investigations as a police officer. I learned one fundamental truth: follow the money. Track the connections, and most importantly, separate what people claim happened from what you can actually prove happened. And that's what we're going to be doing tonight. Now, before we go any further, I need to be crystal clear about something. What I'm presenting today comes from open source intelligence reports. These are allegations, claims, and documented connections. Some of this material has been proven in courts of law, some hasn't. Some of it comes from government investigations, some comes from investigative journalism. And some of it comes from advocacy organisations that have their own agenda completely. My job, as always, isn't to tell you what to believe. My job is to show you what the evidence actually says, where it comes from, and where the gaps are. So, here's what we're not doing today. We're not doing conspiracy theories. We're not doing trust me bro stories. We're doing documented evidence, court records, financial filings, government reports, and verifiable connections. And when something can't be independently verified, I'm going to tell you that too. The documents that we've got here analyse multiple organisations operating across the entire political spectrum, from pro-Israel advocacy groups to conservative think tanks, from Arab state-funded educational networks to Islamic advocacy organisations. They all operate in the United States and the United Kingdom and Europe, and they all share certain characteristics that raise serious questions about foreign influence in particularly democratic Western nations. Right, so this is where it starts to get interesting. We're not talking about obvious foreign agents like embassy staff or registered lobbyists. We're talking about organisations that present themselves as domestic civil rights groups, educational foundations, think tanks, and advocacy organisations. According to these reports, they maintain undisclosed relationships with foreign governments, receive hidden foreign funding, and advance foreign policy objectives. The big question, though, is, are they, as unregistered foreign agents, operating illegally? Or are they legitimate advocacy organisation exercising free speech rights? That's what we're going to be digging into. Hi, Julie. Good to see you. Remember, if you're on either of the chats, you just need to be a subscriber to be able to chat. The chat rooms are fairly tame. Being a subscriber doesn't involve you paying any money. It just means clicking on that button that says subscribe. And for that, I will be thankful. If you want to donate, feel free. For that, I will be appreciative. And you'll get a call out and a siren. Hi, Beats. Right. Section 1. The surveillance state. Historical intelligence operations. So let's start with what could be the most shocking allegations that you may or may not know. And these aren't actually allegations. These are documented historical facts proven in court. We're talking about private organisations conducting domestic surveillance operations for decades, maintaining relationships with foreign intelligence agencies, and operating what amounts to private spy networks on American and British soil. And you knew this was coming, didn't you? The Anti-Defamation League surveillance operation from the 1950s through to 1993. According to FBI documents obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests and court records from 1993, the ADL operated, an extensive domestic surveillance network for approximately 40 years. And we're not talking conspiracy theory territory here. This was exposed by San Francisco police raids in 1993 and documented in federal and state investigations. Here's what the court records show. The operation centred around an Anti-Defamation League operative named Roy Bullock, who used the code name Cal. According to the documents, Bullock's network collected information on over 12,000 individuals in more than 950 organisations. The targets weren't just extremist groups. They included the NAACP, the ACLU, the American Indian Movement, United Farm Workers, Greenpeace, and numerous Arab American organisations. But where it gets particularly concerning, especially from a law enforcement perspective, the operation involved corrupted police officers who provided confidential DMV, that's the Department of Motor Vehicles, records and intelligence files. That's not advocacy, that's intelligence gathering using illegally obtained law enforcement databases. And the most significant revelation involves foreign intelligence connections. Court documents state that ADL operative Bullock admitted that ADL or its agents gave information to the government of Israel. Internal ADL memos from 1961 explicitly acknowledged this intelligence sharing, stating their information has been of great value and service to both the United States State Department and the Israeli government. Sorry, I have a bit of a cough. According to the documents, when the FBI investigation threatened to expose this relationship, Israeli officials intervened directly. A secret FBI memo from March 29, 1993, states that two persons, described as Israeli generals, are in or about to travel to Washington to press for an end to the FBI's investigation. So let's take a pause for a minute and consider what this actually means. So, these are court documents, remember, and if the FBI files are accurate, and they do appear to be, as they are part of an official legal proceeding, we're looking at a private American organisation that maintained intelligence sharing relationships with a foreign government, used corrupted law enforcement officials to access restricted databases, and targeted American civil rights organisations for surveillance. The question isn't whether it happened. The court records show it did happen. The question is, why wasn't anyone prosecuted under the Foreign Agents Registration Act? So, the ADL has stated these operations were focused on tracking anti-Semitism and extremist groups, which is their legitimate mission. That's what they are there for. They've characterised the surveillance as necessary to protect Jewish communities from hate groups. The legal settlements that ended the investigations didn't include any admissions of wrongdoing, and no criminal charges were filed. The ADL maintains that their activities were within legal bounds and focused on legitimate civil rights work. However, the documented intelligence sharing with foreign agencies and the use of corrupted police sources raise serious questions about whether those explanations cover all the activities revealed in the court records. Let's jump forward 30 years to the Heritage Foundation surveillance operations in the 2020s. So according to ProPublica, reporting from 2024, the Heritage Foundation operates domestic surveillance programs through what they call the OSINT project. The documents describe 3 heritage investigators filing thousands of FARA requests, Freedom of Information Act, targeting federal employees, thousands of requests. The system was the operation systematically collected communications mentioning specific terms like climate equity, voting, and SOGI. Look SOGI up if you want in your own time. Not safe for work. This data collection was allegedly coordinated with Project 2025's plan to identify and terminate career civil servants. So FARA requests are legal. Using FARA to identify government employees for potential political purges raises questions about intent. But it's not illegal surveillance using corrupted sources like the ADL case. But it is pushing the boundaries, isn't it? It's operating within the legal mechanisms, but for political purposes. However, the scale and coordination suggests this does go beyond typical government oversight into systematic intelligence gathering on American civil servants based on our communications about specific policy topics. Let's pause again and think about the pattern we're seeing here. Because we've again got private organisations, one on the left, the Democratic side, one on the right, the Republican side, conducting systematic surveillance operations on Americans. Different methods, different targets, different eras, but similar objectives. Gather intelligence on domestic populations to advance political and policy goals. The question is, when does legitimate advocacy become domestic intelligence operations? And when does coordination with foreign interests cross the line into foreign agent territory? Let's dig into the money. Right, follow the money, because we can say whatever you want about your mission and your values, but your funding sources tell me who you actually work for. So the Qatar Foundation model, billions in hidden foreign funding. According to the documents, Qatar operates what might be the most sophisticated foreign funding operation targeting Western educational institutions. The scale is absolutely staggering. Georgetown University alone had $1 billion since 2005. $1 billion. Total UK university funding in excess of 25 million. And that's just the documented amount. It's likely to be far higher. 8 international universities operating at Qatar's Education City. And what makes it particularly clever from an intelligence perspective, Qatar Foundation is structured as a private organisation, which allows state funding to appear as private donations. This potentially circumvents foreign agency registration requirements because it's not technically the Qatari government writing the checks. It's a foundation. It just happens to be funded and controlled by the Qatari royal family. So, former Qatari Prime Minister Hamad bin Jassim admitted in 2022 we would pay journalists in many countries. We would pay them every year. Some of them received salaries. That's not a leaked document. That's not an allegation. That's the former Prime Minister of Qatar openly admitting to paying foreign journalists. Just let that one sink in a little bit. The documents claim that Georgetown underreported their funding to the Department of Education. Remember, Georgetown got $1 billion since 2005. If that's true, that's a violation of federal disclosure requirements. If false, Georgetown should have the documentation to disprove it. But the question remains, why would a foreign government pour over $1 billion into a single American university? Let's look at Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabian academic funding. $233.5 million to British universities. Documents cite UK government analysis identifying Saudi Arabia as the chief foreign promoter of Islamist extremism in Britain. What? Saudi Arabia. Not Iran, not the big bad. Saudi Arabia. With $233.5 million flowing to British universities between 1995 to 2008. And remember, this isn't my opinion. This is the government, the UK government's analysis. Prince Alawid bin Talal, $8 million each to Cambridge and Edinburgh in 2008. Oxford Islamic Studies Centre, $75 million, supported by 12 other Muslim countries. MIT, $77.7 million in Saudi funding, 2012 to 2018. George Washington University, $75.2 million, majority from the Saudi government. The Henry Jackson Society report commissioned by the UK government concluded that Saudi funding maintains a clear and growing link between funded organisation, hate preachers, and jihadist groups promoting violence. And this is a government report. The report documented the number of Salafi mosques in Britain increased from 68 in 2007 to 110 in 2014, with Saudi-funded institutions having played host to extremist preachers. So, critical thinking time. Foreign governments funding academic programs, it's not automatically nefarious. Many countries fund educational exchanges and academic partnerships. The question is, what influence does that funding buy? Are donors determining curriculum content, influencing faculty appointments, restricting academic freedom on certain topics? And crucially, is this funding being properly disclosed to government authorities and the public? The documents allege the answer is yes to all of these questions, but we need to acknowledge that academic institutions dispute these characterizations. Universities argue these partnerships support legitimate academic research and cultural exchange while maintaining academic freedom. Excuse me. You're very quiet in the chat. Are you shocked? Are you taken aback? There's more. Now, particularly interesting from an investigative standpoint, the Council on American Islamic Relations was ordered by a federal judge in 2024 to reveal its foreign funding sources. Instead of complying, CARE settled the lawsuit in February 2025. Now, think about that. Think about that just from the straightforward perspective. When someone would rather pay money, good money, big money, to settle a case than tell you where the money came from, what does that say to you? According to public filings, CARE's revenue was $5.3 million in 2022. But Capital Research Centre analysis shows their top organisational donors are predominantly left-wing foundations, providing funding through donor-advertised funds. Vehicles specifically designed to obscure the original funding sources. And we've spoken about some of them before. The American Online Giving Foundation, $1.6 million. Silicon Valley Community Foundation, $1.5 million. Fidelity Investments Charitable Gift Fund, $1.5 million. Tides Foundation, remember them? $631,000. And that's all dark money by definition. Legal, but deliberately obscured. The question is, why? What foreign funding source was CARE willing to pay a settlement to avoid disclosing? So, CARE's settlement prevents us from knowing if that's true. If it was foreign funding, but the behaviour pattern, the willingness to settle rather than disclose, is certainly consistent with having something to hide. Let's go back to the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, and the financial growth under Greenblatt. Under CEO Jonathan Greenblatt's leadership since 2015, the ADL has experienced dramatic financial growth. 2015 it was approximately 50 million's worth. 2022 it was 105 million in revenue. A 100 million capital campaign launched in 2017 raised over 75 million. Corporate funding sources include Apple, Uber, MGM Resorts, Starbucks. The organisation spent 1.4 million on lobbying in 2024. What's particularly interesting about the ADL's financial structure, they don't fully disclose donor identities. We know some corporate supporters, but we don't know the full funding picture. Given the documented intelligence sharing relationships with Israeli agencies, the question is, do any funding sources have foreign government connections? What about the Heritage Foundation? The Heritage Foundation operates with an annual budget of approximately 113 million, with connections to Koch Industries Funding Network, 4.9 million from 1997 to 2017. Project 25 specifically received 22 million for conservative government staffing operations. Heritage President Kevin Roberts earns nearly $1 million annually while maintaining what Le Monde describes as regular contact with Mar-a-Lago. The organisation coordinates internationally through the Atlas Network, operating with foreign conservative movements across multiple continents. We're not playing favourites here. This is right across the political spectrum. Again, what pattern are we seeing? So what we're seeing across the political spectrum is massive funding operations, often deliberately obscured, flowing from foreign sources to organisations that operate in domestic politics. Some funding is disclosed, some isn't. Some is direct government funding, some is laundered through private foundations. But in every case, the scale of funding raises questions about what influence it buys and whether recipient organisations should register as foreign agents. Right, let's get into explicitly political operations, because if you're going to assess whether an organisation is a foreign influence operation, you need to look at their political activities. Are they genuinely focused on their stated mission, or have they become partisan political operations? So the ADL political donations. According to the Federal Election Commission records cited in the documents, the ADL's political donations show stark partisan patterns. 2024, $144,000 directly to the Democrats, 100%. 2022, $4,102 directly to the Democrats, 100%. 2020, $377,000, 99.81% to the Democrats. And 2018, $6,179 directly to the Democrats, 100%. Plus a further $1.4 million in lobbying expenditures. Now, we've touched on that before, because these guys have only got one office with one employee. That's a lot of staplers. Now, for context, the ADL would argue they're donating based on which candidates support civil rights and oppose anti-Semitism. But that's not their fault. These candidates happen to be almost exclusively Democrats. And that might well be a legitimate argument. But the documents make the point, if you're taking political positions that align 99 to 100% with one political party, while maintaining documented intelligence sharing relationships with a foreign government, doesn't that look like foreign influence operations? Advancing a specific partisan political objective? You tell me. What do your spidey senses say? In October 2025, FBI Director Kash Patel severed the Bureau's decades-long partnership with the ADL, describing the organisation as a political front masquerading as a watchdog. Patel specifically accused the ADL of spying on Americans and referenced the 1993 surveillance scandal. This is significant because it represents the FBI's official assessment that the ADL no longer functions as a legitimate civil rights organisation suitable for law enforcement partnerships. And whether you agree with that assessment or not, it's a dramatic institutional break. You're right, Hatchie, it is. It is indeed, sir. Everything is a racket. There you go. Does that come up? Did it not come up? Oh, it's not working. Not to worry. So in June 2024, Wikipedia editors voted to designate the ADL as generally unreliable. I know. You got to bear with me. This is one of these things. But generally unreliable for information regarding the Israel-Palestine conflict, placing it in the same category as Russian state media and Fox News political coverage. The editors cited the ADL's dual role as an advocacy and research organisation as compromising its ability to provide unbiased information. Additionally, in 2021, it was revealed that ADL staff had extensively edited Wikipedia articles about the organisation itself, potentially violating the platform's conflict of interest policies. Now, as always, I'll be putting documentation up on Sergeant Grumpy, but interestingly, they had a guy on this full time. All he did was edit Wikipedia articles. That was his sole job. And the Wikipedia designation doesn't make the ADL's claims false. It means Wikipedia editors have determined they can't be treated as neutral sources on specific topics. So the FBI severance reflects the current administration's political priorities and could be reversed by future leadership. These are institutional assessments, not court verdicts. However, when major institutions like Wikipedia and the FBI both conclude an organisation lacks credibility or appropriate partnerships, it's got to be worth examining. The Heritage Foundation UK political connections and unprecedented access. Here we go. According to the documents, Heritage Foundation maintains extraordinary access to senior British Conservative politicians with documented speeches and coordination. Among them, Robert Jenrick, currently running for Conservative Party leader, Priti Patel, Conservative leadership candidate, Liz Truss, ex-Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden, Conservative Deputy Leader, Lord David Frost, multiple appearances on behalf of the Heritage Foundation, and Nigel Farage. Multiple US trips for the Heritage Foundation, earning nearly £1 million while serving as an MP. Timing is significant. Several appearances occurred after Project 2025's April 2023 publication, which contains radical proposals for transforming American government. This suggests active coordination between Heritage and UK Conservative leadership on policy transformation strategies. Heritage operates UK connections through the 55 Tufton Street network and Atlas Network partnerships, creating what the documents describe as an integrated international conservative influence operation. And where things get particularly interesting, according to the documents, Sima Vaknin-Gill, Director General of Israel's Ministry of Strategic Affairs, explicitly categorized FDD as an agent of the Israeli government. This is the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. This is an Israeli government agent. That's not an allegation from critics. That's an Israeli government official publicly identifying the Foundation for Defense of Democracies as their agent. Major General retired Amir Eshel, former Israeli Air Force commander, serves as senior fellow. Leaked AEU emails revealed close coordination between FDD senior counsellor John Hanna and AEU ambassador. The FDD claimed joint responsibility with the UAE for a brief military coup attempt in Turkey in 2016. That is a big club, Hachi. The FDD has a revenue of approximately 466,000 with expenses of 510,000, indicating a budget deficit. Carnegie Endowment Analysis found that FDD's chief funders have been drawn almost entirely from American Jews who have a long history of funding pro-Israel organisations. Despite an Israeli government official identifying them as an agent of Israel, the FDD is not registered under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. So let's think about that. When a foreign government official publicly identifies an organisation as their agent, when that organisation coordinates with multiple foreign governments, when it receives foreign funding and advances foreign policy positions, Why isn't it registered as a foreign agent? That's not a rhetorical question. There may be legitimate legal reasons, but from an investigative perspective, it certainly looks like a foreign influence operation operating without registration. Turning Point USA. According to the documents, Turning Point USA organised transportation for January the 6th events, providing 7 buses for 350 students. The organisation received $1.25 million from Publix, Harris, Julie Fancelli for January the 6th logistics. TPUSA founder Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated in 2025, leading to memorial vigils in London and Sydney, indicated significant international influence. The organisation had attempted international expansion with mixed success in the UK. With a revenue of $39.2 million in 2020 and Kirk's salary of over $325,000 from Turning Point USA and related organisation, this represents significant funding for political mobilisation. Educational capture, and we've talked about that at great length last week. So, the most concerning long-term influence operation is the systematic capture of educational institutions, because if you want to shape a society's future, you don't just lobby politicians, you shape what the next generation learns. So the ADL has UK educational programmes called DASH and Jewish Living Online. The ADL's most significant UK operation involves educational programming developed in partnership with the Board of Deputies of British Jews. The key initiative is DASH, Digital Anti-Semitism for High Schools, launched in 2022, targeting secondary school students. Key features include, according to the documents, joint development with the Board of Deputies of British Jews, targeting students aged 11 to 14 and above across England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Direct meetings with UK Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson. Plans to develop teacher training modules. ADL CEO Jonathan Greenblatt. This initiative marks the first of many similar programmes we plan to implement globally. Teaching students about anti-Semitism is legitimate and necessary. Is it? Holocaust education and combating hatred are important educational objectives. Question isn't whether these topics should be taught. Well, maybe they should be taught, yeah. The question is, should an American organisation with documented intelligence sharing relationships with a foreign government and extreme partisan political alignment be developing the curriculum content for British school kids? And should this happen without full disclosure of the organisation's foreign connections? Did you know any of this? I didn't. I didn't know this was going on in schools. And this isn't universities, this is schools. So, Qatar Foundations, Georgetown captured. Remember, they spent $1 billion over, 20 years. According to the documents, Georgetown's Qatar-founded programs function as platforms for what the documents call political Islam and anti-Israel activism. This is where universities get into it, Shalini. They go the other way. The allegations include the Centre for Contemporary Arab Studies, the CCAS, promotes Muslim Brotherhood-aligned perspectives. Oh, heard of them before. I can't think where, though. Anyway, Prince Alawid bin Talal Centre serves as the primary resource for authoritative information on Islam. Is there such a thing? I mean, they argue amongst themselves about what their books mean. Faculty appointments coordinated with Qatari governmental oversight at an American University. Alumni network places Qatar-influenced graduates throughout the US State Department and intelligence agencies. Riddled with agents. Your agencies are riddled with foreign agents. The partnership with the RAND Corporation through RAND Qatar Policy Institute allegedly provides Qatar with influence over research agendas and policy recommendations. So these are serious allegations about foreign government control over American educational content and faculty appointments. Georgetown would dispute these characterizations, of course they would, arguing their academic programs maintain independence and integrity. Do they? Do they really? With that kind of money flowing in, it's hard to turn the tap off. The question is, with over $1 billion in funding, does Qatar have effective veto power over faculty appointments, research topics, or curriculum content that might challenge Qatari interests? The documents allege yes, but Georgetown would presumably say no, but the scale of funding certainly creates potential for influence, whether or not it's being exercised. Julie says, I'll send you photos of Carol's GC's English spelling, punctuation and grammar book. Some of the questions have no place in this book. I can imagine. I can imagine. Saudi university funding promoting a Wahhabi ideology. Documents cite UK government analysis concluding Saudi funding of British universities promotes a liberal, bigoted Wahhabi ideology. Now, this is a government-funded analysis through Islamic study centres. The Henry Jackson Society report found that systematic funding of UK mosques and universities, the number of Salafi mosques increased from 68 to 110. In the minority of cases, UK institutions run directly from Saudi Arabia. Majority of cases, they show the money simply buys foreign donors' influence. This represents foreign government funding being used to promote specific religious interpretations within British educational and religious institutions. Is this religious freedom and cultural exchange, or is this foreign ideological influence operations? I know where I'm coming down, but you think, you look at it, you come to your own conclusion. Educational influence is perhaps the most insidious form of foreign operations because it operates over decades and shapes how entire generations understand the world. The long march through the institutions. When foreign governments fund educational programs, determine curriculum content, influence faculty appointments, and shape research agendas, that's not international cooperation. That's institutional capture. The question is, are Western universities and schools so desperate for funding that they've sold effective control to foreign governments? Section 5. Media, operations and information control. News broadcasts, newspaper front pages, social media feeds. Now let's talk about these sorts of things and controlling the narrative. Because once you've captured educational institutions, the next step is controlling information flow through media operations. Al Jazeera, state-funded media. Qatar operates Al Jazeera as a state-funded media organisation with extensive UK broadcasting reach, according to the documents. They tried to buy the Telegraph. Did you know that? A £1.2 billion bid for Telegraph Media Group was blocked by UK government over public interest concerns. The lobby investigations coordinated undercover operations targeting UK political system. Systematic coverage advancing Qatari foreign policy interests. The Block Telegraph acquisition is particularly significant. The UK government determined that Qatari state control of a major British newspaper posed unacceptable public interest concerns. That's the British government officially assessing Qatari media operations as a threat to UK interests. So, for balance, Al Jazeera produces legitimate journalism and has broken important stories. Many of their reporters are credible professionals, but the organisation is funded by the Qatari government. And the Telegraph acquisition attempt suggests ambitions beyond journalism into direct control of British media institutions. Kiliani says her niece is at uni, she's a bit of a lefty, home for her 21st in a few weeks, and you reckon I guess Vaughn would say she will be wearing one. Are you saying she wouldn't? That she'd be wearing a dishcloth? And you know what? When that kind of money has been pumped into your institutions, what do you expect impressionable young people to come to the conclusion? What conclusions can they come to? Their teachers are telling them this, the lecturers are telling them this, their peer group is picking up on it, and they have people that have been brought up to be indoctrinated in effectively what's a cult. So no wonder we have so many people on the streets protesting about a war that is really nothing to do with us. So, the ADL Wikipedia manipulation. As mentioned earlier in 2021, it was revealed that ADL staff had extensively edited Wikipedia articles about the organisation itself, potentially violating the platform's conflict of interest policies. This represents information control operations targeting one of the world's most accessed information resources. And whether you wholly trust or don't that resource, I think that's something you have to look at. But it is a resource that a lot of people will use. And when an organisation edits its own Wikipedia pages to shape public perception, that's not advocacy. That's information manipulation, or in simpler terms, it's just propaganda. Isn't it? What about the Heritage Foundation media strategy? Project 2025 Global Expansion. Heritage President Kevin Roberts travelled to France in June 2025 to coordinate with European far-right movements, with Le Monde describing him as one of Trump's most zealous ideologues. This signals Project 2025's transformation into what the documents describe as a global operation. Heritage operates extensive media and communications operations, promoting conservative policy positions internationally through the Atlas Network coordination structure. What about the Muslim Brotherhood, their UK media operations? The documents describe the Muslim Brotherhood operating its international headquarters from London, maintaining extensive influence networks across British institutions. The UK government review identified Muslim Brotherhood as a range of organisations loosely associated together, but without common command and control. Key components include the Muslim Association of Britain. Government review found dominated by the Muslim Brotherhood. The Islamic Society of Britain, originally Muslim Brotherhood controlled. The Muslim Council of Britain, Muslim Brotherhood founded, dialogue suspended since 2009. The UAE sanctioned 8 UK-based organisations in January 2025 alleging Muslim Brotherhood connections, creating diplomatic tensions since the UK government does not recognise the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organisation. So we've seen foreign-linked organisations attempting to acquire major media properties, manipulating information platforms, coordinating international media strategies, and operating media organisations that present themselves as independent but serve foreign policy interests. The pattern is clear. Whoever controls information shapes reality. And you know that to be true, especially after having lived through the last 5 years. Whoever controls the information shapes the reality. And foreign-linked organisation, they understand this principle very well. Right. We've seen organisations with foreign funding, foreign intelligence connections, and activities that advance foreign policy objectives. So the obvious question is, why the hell aren't they registered under the Foreign Agents Registration Act? And this is for Americans more than us, but I'm sure we have a similar thing. So let's break down what FARA actually is, because it's not terribly complicated. The Foreign Agents Registration Act says if you're working on behalf of a foreign government or foreign interests, you need to register with the Department of Justice and tell everyone about it. Simple transparency. Public has a right to know when someone's pushing a foreign agenda. So you're supposed to register if you're acting as a publicity agent for foreign government positions. If you're conducting political activities that advance foreign interests, if you're gathering and spreading information on behalf of foreign principles, or if you're coordinating with foreign governments and policy objectives. So based on what we've seen, here's who should be registered. Well, the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025, they coordinate internationally through the Atlas Network, receive foreign funding, work directly with foreign political parties, and run systematic influence operations targeting US government policy. They should definitely be funded. Registered. The Foundation for Defense of Democracies. An Israeli ministry official publicly called them an agent of the Israeli state. They get UAE funding. That's the United Arab Emirates funding. They coordinate in foreign policy objectives. They run anti-Iran campaigns serving foreign interests, and they operate throughout Europe advancing foreign government positions. They should be funded. Here, federal courts have documented Hamas and Muslim Brotherhood connections. They actively conceal foreign funding sources. They settled a lawsuit rather than disclose where their money comes from. Their political activities advance foreign Islamist movement objectives, and they systematically oppose US counter-terrorism policies. The Qatar Foundation Network directs state funding disguised through a foundation structure. They've systematically captured academic institutions to advance Qatari foreign policy, and they run Al Jazeera as state propaganda. Much like our BBC. ADL documented intelligence sharing with Israeli government agencies going back to the 1960s. They run police training programs in the US and educational programs that potentially advance foreign government positions. So let me be crystal clear, I'm not a lawyer, right? And these organisations have very expensive legal teams who presumably believe they're operating within the law. There might be legal distinctions between coordinating with foreign governments and acting as their agent, but there might and there might not. But look at it from a purely investigation perspective. When you've got documented intelligence sharing with foreign agencies, foreign government funding, activities advancing foreign policy objectives, foreign officials identifying organisation as their agents, and systematic concealment of foreign connections. How's that not a foreign agent? So why is it not being enforced? There's widespread FARA non-compliance here looking at this. Across the entire political spectrum, both sides. Organisations that look, walk and quack like foreign agents aren't registered. This suggests either massive enforcement failures or something else is going on. And maybe this is what it could be. Maybe there are legal interpretations that exempt these activities from FARA requirements. Maybe there's no political will to enforce it against well-connected organisations. Maybe they're deliberately exploiting loopholes, or maybe the Department of Justice just doesn't have the resources for investigation and enforcement. So if FARA exists to ensure transparency about foreign influence, but organisations with documented foreign connections, foreign funding and activities advancing foreign interests aren't registering, then that law's failed. Why it's on the books, but why bother? It's meaningless. So why isn't it enforced? Is it because these organisations are technically don't meet the legal requirements, or are they too politically powerful to prosecute? I think I know which one I'm picking. Let's focus specifically on operations targeting British institutions, because the UK faces unique foreign influence challenges given its historical global role and current position in European and transatlantic politics. According to the documents, British authorities demonstrate inconsistent responses to foreign influence operations. We blocked Qatar's Telegraph Media Group acquisition, blocked on public interest grounds. The government review of Muslim Brotherhood operations was conducted in 2015. The recognition of concerns about Saudi funding of extremism was noted. But we have permitted the Heritage Foundation extensive political coordination with conservative leadership. We've permitted Saudi university and mosque funding continuing despite extremism concerns. What are we trying to do? We've permitted the ADL educational programs operating without disclosure requirements. In schools, remember, targeting 11 to 14-year-olds. And we've permitted the Qatar Foundation University partnerships continuing. So this selective response suggests that political considerations may override consistent enforcement of foreign influence concerns. Indeed, it does. The documents reference the 55 Tufton Street network as a coordination point for conservative foreign influence operations in the UK. This address houses multiple think tanks and advocacy organisations with international connections, creating what critics describe as a coordinated influence infrastructure. Heritage Foundation's UK operations allegedly connect through this network, creating what the documents call integrated international conservative influence operations. And remember, Saudi funding of $233.5 million to British universities between 1995 and 2008 represents a massive foreign government investment in UK educational institutions. Henry Jackson Society report commissioned by the UK government concluded this funding directly promoted extremist ideology and maintains links to jihadist groups. Hello? What's happening? Despite this government-commissioned assessment, the funding continues with minimal restrictions or disclosure requirements. Shocking, yeah. Hi, Emma. Qatar Foundation's 25 plus million in documented funding to UK universities, likely significantly higher, creates similar influence concerns. The Block Telegraph acquisition demonstrates UK government recognition of Qatari influence concerns, but educational funding continues unimpeded. ADL educational programme. The ADL's DASH programme, which targets 11 to 14-year-olds and British schools, remember, operates across England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, with direct meetings between ADL leadership and UK Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson. This represents an American organisation with documented foreign intelligence connections, gaining direct political access to British educational leadership. So why does an American organisation require direct access to the UK Education Secretary to operate educational programmes in British schools? What oversights ensures these programmes don't advance foreign influence objectives? The Muslim Brotherhood operates its international headquarters from London, with the UK government review identifying it as a range of organisations loosely associated together, but without common command and control. The UK government conducted a formal review in 2015, but stopped short of designating Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organisation, creating tension with the United Arab Emirates and other nations that have designated MB as terrorists. This allows MB-linked organisations to operate freely in the UK while being banned in other allied nations. In Britain's position as a global financial centre, its historical ties to Middle Eastern nations, its world-leading universities, and its role in transatlantic politics make it a prime target for foreign influence operations. The question is, are British institutions so dependent on foreign funding and so eager for international engagement that they've created massive vulnerabilities to foreign influence? I think yes. And is the UK government willing to enforce consistent standards? No, they aren't. Does political calculation determine which foreign influence is acceptable? Yes, it does. So let's step back and look at the bigger picture. When you're investigating multiple cases, you look for patterns, and I think we've pointed out quite a few patterns already tonight, haven't we? If different actors are using the same playbook, that tells you something important. It tells you what works. And the pattern is very striking. Every single one of these organisations does this. They hide their money. Qatar launders state funding through private foundations. CARE uses donor-advised funds to conceal who's really paying them. The ADL only partially discloses corporate funding. Saudi money flows through multiple royal family entities. Heritage gets Koch network funding and international sources, but only partially discloses it. The pattern: deliberately obscure funding sources through legal structures designed to prevent transparency. If they were proud of where their money came from, they would tell you, wouldn't they? They don't. Second, capture of educational institutions. Qatar drops over $1 billion into Georgetown and builds entire branch campuses. Saudi Arabia puts 233 plus million into UK universities and 75 million into Oxford alone. The ADL develops K-12 educational programs in the UK and the US. Heritage builds university partnerships through the Atlas network. This isn't about funding a few scholarships. This is long-term investment in controlling what future generations learn. Capture the universities, shape the next generation's worldview, and in 20 years, you've got a fundamentally changed society. Third, they all run intelligence operations. The ADL operated its 40-year domestic surveillance program. That's proven in court. Heritage files thousands of FARA requests systematically targeting federal employees. FDD coordinates with Israeli and AAE intelligence services. The UK government reviewed documented Muslim Brotherhood intelligence networks. These are private organisations running intelligence gathering operations that support foreign government intelligence objectives. That's not advocacy, that's spying. These people are spies and they're operating in the open. They buy political access. And yes, I've always said it, your politicians are nothing but prostitutes because they are easily bought and their minds are easily changed by showing them the money. The ADL spends 1.4 million on lobbying, has direct meetings with officials and gives 99 to 100% of its donations to one party. Heritage has direct access to senior UK Conservative leadership, and Project 2025 is literally about staffing the government with their people. Okay, that they're not in power anymore, but that will not stop them because they will be at some point. Or someone who looks like them with a different name. Ooh. Same story. FDD gives congressional testimony and coordinates policy with foreign governments. Qatar tried to buy the Telegraph newspaper for $1.2 billion. They're not lobbying on issues. They're systematically cultivating relationships at the highest levels of government. This is exactly what Judas was given. These silver pieces to betray his friend, his God. They control information. And we can see that everywhere, can't we? I think I'll be lucky if this one stays up. Because Qatar runs Al Jazeera, tried to buy the Telegraph. The ADL manipulates Wikipedia articles. They've got members of staff dedicated to doing it. Heritage coordinates media through the Atlas Network internationally. The Muslim Brotherhood operates networks of organisation and media platforms. Whoever controls the information shapes reality. That's a good phrase. I think we'll use that again. These organisations all understand that. They all understand it perfectly. They exploit legal loopholes. Every single one operates as a domestic non-profit or foundation. None are registered under FARA, despite clear foreign connections. They use legal structures specifically designed to obscure foreign influence, and they rely on the government simply not enforcing existing transparency laws. Their objectives are all different, but their methods are all identical. The pro-Israel networks, ADL, FDD, IPAC, they want to advance Israeli foreign policy. They shape Middle East policy. They monitor anti-Israeli activism and maintain intelligence relationships. The conservative networks, Heritage, TPUSA, want to export an authoritarian conservative model internationally. Transform democratic institutions through personnel as policy and coordinate with foreign right-wing movements and use surveillance against opponents. The Arab and Islamic networks, Qatar, Saudi, Muslim Brotherhood, CARE, want to influence Western discourse on Middle East issues, build political influence through institutional capture, and I think you can say they've done that. They've captured their institutions and promote specific religious interpretations. It's a religion of peace. So why? Why are they doing this? Why are they all using the same tactics? Because the tactics work. Funding opacity works. Educational capture works. Intelligence operations work. Political access works. Media control works. Legal structure exploitation works. They all use the same playbook because it exploits fundamental vulnerabilities in democratic systems. Institutions need funding and will take it from questionable sources. Everyone wants international engagement. Transparency laws have gaps, and foreign agent regulations aren't enforced against powerful organisations. None of this is a conspiracy. We're just recognising an effective strategy when we see it repeated across the political spectrum. Oh, we're just about done, guys. We're just about done. What's the channel? What's the chat saying? Emma says the Bible's got a lot. I don't need anything else to read, honestly. China's influence too. Yes, it does. It does. China's influence isn't so much on the political spectrum, and China's influence is more directed at Belt and Road at the moment, more towards Africa, and the nations are surrounding them more. They don't really need to do much with America and the UK and Europe, because we are effectively seeing ourselves off, aren't we? Hi, Matthew. Right, okay. Children and men. Right, okay. Let's section 9. This is us, last section. Evidence-based assessment of what we've done tonight. So, we're at the end of the investigation, and we'll do what we do when we're closing a case. We'll separate what we know from what we think we know. We'll identify where the evidence is solid and where it's shaky, and give you the professional assessment. So evidence comes in different grades. Some things you can prove beyond any doubt. Some things are strongly indicated but not quite proven. And some things are alleged but lack independent verification. So let's break down what we've got here. Tier 1, proven beyond reasonable doubt. These are facts established through court records, FBI documents, and official government findings. Nobody disputes these happened. The ADL 1993 surveillance operation. Court documented, FBI confirmed. Roy Bullock and his network monitored over 12,000 individuals and 950 organisations. They used corrupted police sources to access restricted database. Internal ADL memos from 61 admit to intelligence sharing with the Israeli government. The FBI memo about Israeli generals trying to shut down the investigation is authentic. It happened. It's a matter of court record. Foreign funding to universities. The numbers are documented in federal disclosure filings, where they're actually disclosed. Georgetown did receive that $1 billion from Qatar since 2005. British universities have received well over probably 250 million plus from Arab countries. Oxford received 75 million for its Islamic Studies Centre. Again, they're not allegations, they're in the financial records. We can take them as read. Political donation patterns. FEC records show the ADL's political donations, all to the Democrats in 2024, 2022, 2020, 2018. Public record. Heritage Foundation FOIA operations. ProPublica's 2024 report on the Oversight Project is solid investigative journalism. 3 heritage investigators filed thousands of FOIA requests, systematically targeting federal employees based on specific terms. Hi Harold, how you doing, mate? I haven't seen you for ages. That's all documented. CARE was ordered by a federal judge in 2024 to reveal foreign funding sources. Instead, they settled the lawsuit in February 2025. They paid to not have their cards seen. So we don't know what they were hiding. But we knew that they chose to pay rather than disclose who was funding them. The FDD and the Israeli government. The Director General of Israel's Ministry of Strategic Affairs publicly identified the FDD as an agent of the Israeli government. That's on record. He said it. There. Tier 2, strongly indicated but not judicially proven. Serious allegations supported by substantial evidence, but they haven't been tested in court or they haven't been independently verified by multiple sources. The current educational capture. The documents allege that Qatar has effective control over Georgetown faculty appointments, curriculum content, and research agendas due to the scale of funding. Georgetown would dispute this. The $1 billion funding creates the potential for influence, a massive potential. But proving actual control, that would require some more revelatory documents, wouldn't it, that we currently don't have access to. Saudi funding and extremism links. Henry Jackson Society report commissioned by the UK government found links between Saudi funding and extremist ideology, documenting the increase in Salafi mosques from 68 to 110 between 2007 and 2014. But correlation isn't necessarily causation. Saudi Arabia would dispute these characterizations. Of course they would, because they hide their money. Remember, it came through a foundation, not directly. CARE foreign funding sources. We know CARE settled rather than disclosing. We know their funding came through donor-advised funds designed to obscure sources. The documents allege hidden foreign funding. That's plausible given the behaviour, but I can't prove it, not conclusively, because the settlement prevented that disclosure. Project 2025, international coordination. Heritage's connections with UK Conservative politicians are documented through speeches and meetings. Whether this constitutes coordinated international influence operations or just normal think tank networking is a matter of interpretation. Remember who we were looking at? Jenrick, Truss, Farage. Tier 3, alleged but lacking independent verification. These are claims made in the documents that may be true but lack significant independent verification or are disputed by the organisations involved. Current ADL intelligence sharing. The 60s memos and 93 court records prove historical intelligence sharing. Whether it continues today, as alleged, it does, but we can't prove it with contemporary documentation. The ADL does train the police in the US, and it has close government relationships, which does create opportunities, but that's again different from definitive proof. Specific curriculum control. The documents allege foreign donors directly control curriculum content and restrict academic freedom. Universities will dispute this. Without internal communications or whistleblower testimony, we can't definitively prove it one way or the other. But I think we can see that something's going on in our universities, as we appear to have one type of person that comes out, and they all have the same approach, almost. Ongoing surveillance beyond FOIA. The Heritage Foundation operations are documented. Whether this extends to other forms of surveillance is alleged but not proven with the same level of confidence. So, here's my conclusions. And these are just my conclusions. Yours might be different. First, the historical surveillance stuff, particularly ADL, proven beyond any doubt, definitely happened. Private organisation run a 40-year intelligence operation, used corrupted law enforcement sources, and shared intelligence with a foreign government. That's a given. It's not a theory, it's a documented fact. Second, the scale of foreign funding is massive and deliberate. Over $2 billion from Qatar to Georgetown alone, hundreds of millions from Saudi Arabia to universities, and systematic use of structures designed to obscure funding sources. This level of investment isn't charity. It's not done through the good of your heart. It's buying influence. Whether that influence extends to actual control is harder to prove, but the funding is indisputable and the funding's there. My personal view, a lot of our institutions have been compromised. The political activities of several organisations align suspiciously well with foreign government interests. When an organisation's political donations go 99 to 100% to one party, when a foreign government official identifies an organisation as their agent, when groups settle lawsuits rather than disclose funding, these are strong indicators of foreign influence operations. FARA enforcement has completely failed. You might as well not have that law, US. Whether these organisations technically meet the legal definition of foreign agent, it's a legal question, but from an investigative perspective, when you see this level of foreign funding, intelligence sharing, political coordination, and deliberate concealment, it's a no-brainer. The law's not working. It's not partisan. We haven't looked and singled out any particular organisation or any particular side of the political spectrum. It stretches across them all. They are all corrupted. I've always said it. Your biggest danger is the government. So it goes across the entire political spectrum. Pro-Israel networks, conservative think tanks, Arab state-funded foundations, Islamic advocacy organisations are all using the same playbook because it's working. Funding opacity, educational capture, intelligence operations, political access, media control, legal loopholes, different goals, identical methods. Propaganda, propaganda, propaganda. You can't believe anything that comes out of Israel or Palestine or Ukraine or Russia because it's all propaganda. You can't really believe anything unless you're there and can see it. And you can't believe anything from our own sources that we've traditionally looked upon as ours, like the papers. The papers used to tell you the truth with a slant. Now, it just appears to be downright fabrication. Look at the BBC. What's true? What's false? You can't tell. You have to dig into the actual raw data and go, well, obviously the BBC's wrong here because they're telling us this and these are the stats. It's crazy. We can't prove current ongoing intelligence sharing without contemporary documents. Okay. We can't prove specific curriculum control without internal communications. We don't have them. Nobody's leaking them. We can't prove coordination is illegal without legal proceedings. Somebody's got to test it in court. We can't prove organisations are violating FARA without Department of Justice investigations. What we can prove massive foreign funding to institutions. We can prove historic surveillance operations. We can prove intelligence sharing relationships. We can prove political activities aligned with foreign interests. And we can prove systematic concealment of funding sources. All behaviour consistent with foreign influence operations. Bottom line, are these organisations foreign agents? Well, legally, that's for the courts to decide. But practically, based on the evidence, yeah. Several of them sure look like it. At a minimum, they demonstrate the characteristics consistent with foreign influence operations. Foreign funding, foreign coordination, activities advancing foreign interests, and systematic concealment. They're foreign agents. And both sides, the US, the UK, and Europe need to start enforcing legislation if they've got it to cramp down on this. Because look at the state of our current organisations. Look at the state of our current country. What do you think? Do you think that's been a reasonable explanation of what's going on? Does it help you out, or does it just make you confused and even more depressed? And feel free to drop me comments. Don't give me any trust me bro stuff. Just if you've got evidence, fine. But Don't bother giving me stories that you can't back up, because that's not evidence. And I went through that with the cult of UFO stuff. Most of that's just bullshit. Bullshit. So, closing argument. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here to show you what the evidence says and let you make up your own mind. What we've documented today is concerning, regardless of your political affiliation. If you're on the left, you should be concerned about Heritage Foundation, FDD and conservative networks operating with foreign coordination. If you're on the right, you should be concerned about Qatar, Saudi, organisations like CARE concealing foreign funding sources. If you're in the centre, you're concerned about it all. Because here's the thing, foreign influence operations don't care about your politics. They care about advancing foreign interests. And their politics is not our politics. And when democratic institutions, universities, media, political parties, educational systems, when they all become dependent on foreign funding and foreign coordination, that's a threat to democracy in the West. And it's happening. I think we've shown it is happening. Scale's massive. The methods are sophisticated, and the enforcement of existing law is essentially non-existent. Because who do you think's getting their nest feathered? Who do you really think is really getting their nest feathered? Jenrick, Farage, Starmer, they're all in it up to their fucking eyeballs. What do we do next? That's up to citizens, journalists and elected representatives who still care about transparency and accountability. Is there anyone left? Rupert Lowe? I don't know. If any of you know Rupert, ask him to have a look at this. See if I'm on the right track. So there we go. No, that's the problem, Matthew. Everyone but us, because we're a small and dedicated group. But hey, Emma, you know, you've got to bring out the reality of the situation. Because remember, whoever controls the information shapes reality. Good night.